the topic that we were discussing is the world creation, how it affects our consciousness. When we leave this realm, and we may regain our full essence and all that kind of shit. Ego and so on, and safety while making our realms and everything. All right, so my first thing when I is let's say I'm about to die. I get hit by a car. I start bleeding out, and I'm like, ah, shit. It fucking hurts. I start getting cold. It doesn't hurt anymore. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm about to die. This is fucking awesome. I start doing my mantras. Like mentally preparing myself, setting up my shielding. Like making sure my intention is clear. I'm focused and everything, and then I die. And then it's like, okay, I create my own, stealth shield and everything. I create my realm and I go to my realm. That's like the main core of my escape guide. And if you wanted to, you could also broadcast a fucking emergency distress call to all the spirits, in the astral realms. If you wanted to, it'd be like, yeah, this is my mental, like information about the soul trap. That might piss off the demiurge. If you try to do that, it might be funny. It's just an option. So you enter your own realm. This is a realm that nobody else is able to interact with, even like detect or like enter anything. It's your own little like Minecraft server. You're the fucking god of it. So in this realm, the first thing I want to do is start investigating. I don't want to fucking regain my full fucking essence right away, because that could disturb what my current ego state is at the moment. So for example, if you imagine a being that's lived, for 1,000 years in different lifetimes, and currently they're living as a 12-year-old, playing football or something. They die, they enter the astral realms, and then they remember some previous life where they were, a evil fucking soldier murdering kids for, their overlord or whatever, and they lived to like 90 years old, and they were all like gung-ho about their dictatorship or something. How much of 12-year-old personality is going to be maintained when the person regains the memories of 90 years of that shit? Like, is he the 12-year-old or is he the 90-year-old? So when you exit this place and you start regaining your memories and everything, you should be careful about what you're actually accepting in, because if you do like your current personality, then you might not want to change it, before you can actually investigate shit. So my idea is basically that instead of just doing that kind of shit where you're doing a like, yeah, full self now, memories back now kind of mantra or something to regain your full self, instead of doing that right away, I was thinking basically that I would create like a monitor, like a TV screen in my own realm, and basically display my old memories in there without regaining them personally. That way I can like analyze them from a distance. So it's not me who's remembering it, I'm observing the memories. So I have like a personal distance from the information. That way I'm not gonna, change my personality into someone who believes in the great dictator of, I don't know, Kashuma or some shit, whatever realm I was living in.
Right.
What were you gonna say?
Oh no, it's very wise. That's very wise.
Yeah, okay. So basically, you distance yourself from the information in order to maintain your current ego. Because if you imagine a eternal being, it's like it's not just 90 years as a 12-year-old. It's literally one lifetime against eternity. So what kind of being are you once you regain your full self, your full memories? And not only that, when people astral project, they can do something where basically they do a mantra where they're like, higher clarity now, which is something that the vegan skeptic talks about in his books, and all that kind of shit. Where basically, instead of being 10 out of 10 lucid like you are right now, you become like 15 out of 10 lucid. So if you imagine a person who goes into his own realm and starts doing the mantra of having higher clarity, regaining his full self, what is the limit of what your mental abilities, like, how far are you gonna develop? You might be like a complete god being at that point. It might not even be 15 out of 10. Might be 100,000 out of 10 for all you know.
Right. Something inconceivable to us right now.
Yeah, and that could completely change who you are as a person. It's like the old
Right.
there's a movie character called like Dr. Manhattan or whatever, and he like gains this like awesome powers, intelligence, and everything. And after doing that, he doesn't even consider the difference between living, humans and dead humans, because to him, it's all a bunch of atoms. It becomes like impersonal, because I have this expression where I call it all knowing is all dead. Because when it comes to the meaning of information, the meaning comes from a limited perspective. So, for example, when you write fiction, you don't tell everything about the characters. You tell the limited perspective that gives the meaning to the story.
Hmm. Still, though, I mean, with the brain being a reducing valve in the way that it is, and then that post-death state, at least in the way the vegan skeptic says, where your clarity goes up, you know, orders of magnitude. I can't see how a being of that degree of wisdom could forget what suffering would be, and be so indifferent towards it. If anything, you would know it and have it internalized more, right? I mean,
You may, but there's also the possibility that because your information storage is so vast, and as an eternal being, suffering in a matrix realm for 100 million years might be like a paper cut to you. It might be nothing in the grand scheme of things. And so a being of such immense power and knowledge might look at someone stuck in a matrix and be like, "Don't be a bitch. It's only 100 billion years. You're a fucking eternal being. Well, what's the problem here? I spent one game world, during that term. It's like, why are you complaining? I'm busy doing this thing." Like, there's no way to guarantee what kind of like personality and perspective that we have once we go into those realms, because right now we're limited to a current perspective. So from our perspective, it makes perfect sense to be like, this is fucking terrible. Why don't you do something? But from our previous state, it might be a nothing burger.
well, I think that's what fosters all those questions about, whether or not there's a good, quote, good God out there somewhere allowing this or not allowing it, is indifferent to it, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and it's like, it could even be that some beings do these kind of things to themselves just to experience things. Like, it might be a cool thing, like when kids go into the woods and they stand with their backs to the woods, kind of like in that horror movie, The Village, and they like test their bravery, like it could be
Mm.
something like that where people are just playing an Earth's, hell simulated game to see how tough they are.
Could be. They don't read the full TOS though, in terms of service, right? Where Earth is the place of no return. The winning the game is leaving.
Yeah, it's like from the perspective of an eternal being, even like if I fail the game and I take 100 billion years to exit it, it's nothing compared to the grand scheme of things. That's just gonna be like a low rep, among my other spirits friends, who did it in the first lifetime. Like, oh, you lost the game, bro. You got stuck for 100 million years. What a loser. Like, ha ha ha, this was funny. Let's go play another game.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's I can put myself in that perspective as some sort of like, indifferent cosmic being, but at the same time it doesn't reduce or make whole the suffering and evil that is occurring in these sorts of realms. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, but I mean, everything is from our own current perspective, and there's no way to guarantee that's gonna be your perspective later on. So it's,
Right?
I
Who
mean, you
knows?
could have been a giant fucking asshole in your true self, and then you come here and you have good parents and they teach you some values, and you think you're a 12-year-old kid who, cleans the garbage every morning because he's a good kid and he helps grandma, walk across the street, and he feels good about it. And then, he wakes up after he dies and he's like, what the fuck was that all about?
Well, that's the big question about our earthly existence here, right? I mean, how much of our personality is what they would say genetic, and how much of it is shaped by the environment? And I think the more occult question is how much of our personality is carried over from one time to the next. That sort of we're sort of an amalgam of all of them, maybe.
Yeah, that's possible as well. I do have a first memory that I can bring up that comes to mind when it comes to this topic. So in my first memory, I basically spawned into a body, kind of. I I remember walking into the hallway, seeing a woman, and calling out her name, which was the name of my Earth Mother. But I didn't know who this was. My body knew who it was. So like my brain gave me information about it, and I basically said the name of the person, kind of like looking at a car and saying car. And like if you asked me what walking into the hallway is, I wouldn't be able to tell you because I was just exploring and the body was like moving on its own because I wanted to, explore, so the body moved for me. So like
I'm
there was
sorry.
a
This memory is a pre-birth memory.
no, this is my first memory ever. My
Okay,
first
I'm
memory.
sorry. Your first memory. Got it.
Yeah. So basically, my body and I were distinct, like yeah, awareness or like information givers. So there was me, and then there was the information that the body had. So like if you ask me what a table is, my body would probably tell me a table is this thing, but to me that would be like exploring a new thing. So like I have this theory that I might be like a walk-in who basically adapted a body, and
Right.
my theory is that I might actually have come here in order to like help other beings, which is kind of funny because I made a YouTube channel about escaping the Matrix, so that might actually be true. It's so because I had this personality as a kid growing up where I was always kind of like gung ho about justice, like I hated injustice, people being mistreated, like fight the
Likewise.
power, like yeah,
Yeah.
sacrifice yourself for the greater good, that kind of like personality things. So I think I carried that over from my true personality in before I came here. So I do think that a lot of our stuff that we come into our lives with is actually how we are in a way, at least a resemblance of it, and then like you have the matrix implants on top of that. And there's a good reference that I mentioned in my casual talk video, where basically uh, if you imagine your true personality as a curtain in front of like the sunny window or whatever, if you stretch it out to like see the actual personality, it's gonna be shiny, it's gonna look good, it's gonna have its own like color and everything. But when you come into the matrix and you start living, you get an abusive parent or whatever other trauma, then that is kind of like yeah, narrowing the curtains and you see all the wrinkles, and the shadows and misformations and everything. But once you leave this place, if you just roll up the curtain again, it's gonna be, blank and shiny again, like your true personality. So more than likely, all of our past lifetimes is a bunch of wrinkles that are basically like matrix implants, but it's not actually us as a true self. It's more like scarring that you could cure basically by rolling out the curtain again.
Very interesting.
So when it comes to the whole idea of after you leave the matrix and you start creating your own realm, basically, I want to investigate reality and myself from a distance before I accept any of my old ego, basically. Because you have the current ego that you have right now with like matrix implants and everything. When I had my OBE experience, I was basically the way I am now mentally, but I didn't have impulses from the body. So, like, no hunger or anything like that. It was just pure, like, awareness, basically, thinking clearly. 10 out of 10 lucidity, like I am right now. But once you go out of this matrix, you create your own realm. You go into the realm and you start, regaining memories and everything. And you start, higher self or whatever, like full self or however you want to talk about it. Uh, it could be, that you have, 300,000 something out of 10 lucidity at that point. You become like a fucking god being or something. Because when you think about it, so my theory is that this realm is created by a creator being such as ourselves, kind of like an asshole making a prank show or something, whatever. It kind of just makes sense, like based on how this reality is made. It's kind of like yeah, that's just my theory basically. And if you imagine what kind of like intelligence level would be required by a being to make such a place as this, with all the symbolism, the mantra, like connections to everything, like the intelligence level of such a being would be ginormous.
Be like AI like.
Yeah, like just the level of awareness and processing power of your true awareness would be massive.
Right.
and more than likely you're just as massive, like maybe even bigger for all you know. So like if you just adapt all of that shit into yourself when you leave this place, like I'm going to reclaim my true self, then that may change your personality to a degree that you might not even be able to imagine. It's kind of like the story of the 12-year-old who remembers 90 years old of being like an evil soldier. Like that kind of level of knowledge would be ginormous. So, so basically, this, yeah, so your true self might be completely different from what it is right now. You might not consider this matrix to be like anywhere near as bad as it is from your current perspective, and other things as well, like yeah, what I mentioned with Dr. Manhattan, where he became like impersonal about the person dying because to him it's just a bunch of dead atoms anyway. Like
Yeah.
yeah, all knowing is all dead, like yeah, if there's nothing to experience something, then like is there actually anything that's real? It's kind of like the thought experiment of like what does one hand clapping sounds like, or if a tree falls in the wood and nobody's there to hear it, did it really fall? Or the example of if there is no consciousness in this Earth reality, and you have all these trillions of stars, and like everything, uh, would it actually even effectively exist, or would it just be a bunch of dead material? And in like effect, it's it's basically non-existent because there's nothing to experience it. So basically, you need to be aware of the personality change that you might actually have if you were to adopt your full self. So in order to be careful about what you actually change into, I want to basically use like a monitor kind of thing to investigate who I would actually become if I accept those things before I actually do it, so that I don't personality
And I'm
wipe
sorry.
myself.
It's remind me again. On this monitor is sort of like a collage of all the forms that you've had throughout eternity.
Yeah, basically,
Okay.
it's like looking through a picture book, of like your past history, kind of like that. So that you can like analyze shit. You can have an AI that like tells you about shit. Whatever kind of way that you would like to do it. But basically, you keep a step away from it being personal information so that you don't personality change yourself. It's like reading a story rather than living it. So instead of being the character, you can analyze the character. And if you like that character, then you could regain your memory so that it's first-hand experience of it rather than a second-hand. But I would like possibly change your personality, so like be ready about that. So it's kind of like being careful about what you choose, like be careful what you wish for type of thing. I
Right.
talk about that in my recap and world creation videos. Like, yeah, whenever you make a realm, you need to be like careful about what you actually do because you can kind of like screw yourself over if you're not careful.
Absolutely. Got to build in a lot of redundancies.
Yeah, 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 and like test out your abilities and what the limitations or non-limitations are. What you can actually do, what you can't do, all that kind of shit. Investigate reality from a distance. See what other beings are doing. How reality works, how time flows. Everything. I mean, we lack so much information right now that we need to be careful when we leave this place to not mess ourselves over. I would even, like, yeah, do slight memory wipes to kind of like test out my powers. So, like, I could create two boxes. I could make like a red ball, a blue ball, and then put the balls into the boxes. And then, like, memory wipe which box has which ball, and then, like, put
Mm-hmm.
a timer or something where it's like, I would remember again which box is which.
Yeah, that is
Just to
such a
like
good idea.
test things
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Basically, spend a crap ton of time because you're an immortal being. Time is not a matter, basically. Just take as much time as you need to just investigate everything so you don't fuck yourself over. And like if you just leave your own safety realm and go hang out with some other spirits, you may fuck yourself over. And if you just create some I don't know, a fucking action hero game or something in your own realm and you memory wipe yourself, you might get stuck in that realm forever.
Do you have any particular desire for like an ultimate outcome for your own personalized realm?
I mean, I want to do all kinds of things. It's a lot of the personal tastes that we have right now and like wishes, like, oh, hot girls and, fast cars or whatever.
No,
It's
I just mean more of like the characteristics of the realm, like sprawling vistas, rolling waterfalls, stuff like that.
yeah, I was
I know,
gonna
I
get
know, I know
into
that's
it.
very like earth-based thinking, but I mean, it's the only thing that we have to to talk to compare to. So
Yeah, from my current perspective, like those things are interesting to us. So, hot girls, fast cars, sprawling grasslands, waterfalls, whatever type of things, adventure games, But it's that's only from my current perspective. Like if we regained our full self, that might not even be interesting at all. So it's like in 3D space games, like that might be a really silly fucking 2D game compared to like what our experience is. So like yeah, it might be fun to do those things. You might want to spend a lot of time doing that kind of shit just to like do what you did and get to do here, just for fun or whatever. But when it comes down to it, it might not be an interesting thing at all. And like once you start
mm,
remembering who you actually are and investigating reality, there might be way
yeah,
more better things to do.
yeah, I can see that.
So don't like limit your mind basically to just Earth-like realms.
Well, we'll just make everything purple, like the movie Soul, right?
Yeah, you could do that as well. It's and there's
Flowing
so
through
much fucking shit you could do.
that glitter.
Yeah, and I think something else that I wanted to mention also, specificity. Be very, very fucking specific about the shit you do when you leave this realm. Don't just say, I create a realm, I go to the realm. Because then it's like, okay, well, then the realm is basically, nilly willy, whatever. And that might even be, within the matrix. So,
Yeah,
like, be very specific.
attention to detail is important. Also the notion that in those realms that things manifest pretty much at the speed of thought too. So you got to be really mindful about, mindful, no pun intended, but you got to be really cautious about what your contemplations and your ruminations are.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's, uh, what the fuck else was I gonna mention? Yeah, what I was gonna mention is, shit, now my mind fucking blanked. Yeah, it's a specificity. Something else that I wanted to mention. There is a possibility that as above, so below type of thing. We might have like an unconscious level to our true selves, just as we have an unconscious level in our body being. It's when people die, they have the same personalities and everything. When they have OBE experiences, near death experiences. I mean. So it's like we might actually have, an unconscious part of ourselves and a conscious part. So like if you create your own realm and in this realm you create a dog, then like the unconscious part of you might create the details of the dog because you didn't specify it. So it's like, okay, we'll fill it in and it will be like a husky dog. That might be the case. And you might even like give it personality and everything if you don't specify things. So being specific about what you do is very important, especially with like your safety mechanics. Of like setting up AIs that like wake you up if something happens. If someone invades your realm for some reason. You know, be very specific about every single thing you do. And when I had my OBE experience, I did not go back to my body until I decided to do so. I thought about the possibility of going back to my body, but I didn't do that when I thought about it because I made sure to maintain my focused intention on what I was doing. I was just thinking about the possibilities rather than putting my intention into going back to my body. And it wasn't until I put my intention to do it that it actually happened. So like there's a distinction between thinking about options and thinking about this is what I want to do. So like be very clear minded and focused when you do things.
What did the body appear like to you when you had your OB?
Well,
What was its quality or character?
yeah, so I did a little trick thing that the vegan skeptic told me about. Basically, when you wake up, you don't move your body, and then as a mental image, you basically roll on your different sides. Like roll to the left, roll to the right. While you're lying in
Mm.
bed, but you don't actually move your body. Just mentally make it so that you're rolling around. Basically, like focus your mind on the image of it.
Okay, I see.
And then as I rolled to the right, I felt myself hearing this like loud beeping noise, like
Mm.
kind of like noise. I felt sick as all hell. It was like, oh, holy shit, I feel so fucking ill in like my whole body. And then I sank through the bed basically. Like I just started going through the bed, and like all of my physical feelings they disappeared, and the only connection that I had to my body, which is kind of funny, is that my legs were still stuck in the physical realm. So like my upper body
Okay.
exited the body, but like my legs were still stuck.
Oh
I have a
shit.
suspicion that this is because basically I was imagining my upper body rolling around, but I didn't focus on my lower body, so I may just have put my intention on, getting the upper body out of the body
Okay.
or something.
Had you been like taking baby steps and leading up to this big one, or
No, this
did
was
it?
the first time I tried doing it.
Oh
It's
wow.
I haven't like remembered to do it when I wake up before that moment, and the first time I tried doing it, it worked. So that kind of shows the power of our intention. Like the first time I intended to do it, it worked.
That's badass. I'd like to start trying, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm on too many medications that are gonna get in the way.
I mean, I don't know. It's when it comes to medication shit and that kind of stuff. I mean, if you take a medication, then you consented, to the medication affecting you in different ways. So it's like if you take a random drug, you're gonna be affected by a random drug. Like if you don't know what it does. So it's like I don't know how that would affect you. But it's
Yeah, I mean, I'm not happy about needing to take them, but I feel like I do need to take them, so it is what it is, I guess.
yeah, I could see that. It's I don't know. I think your intention could still work through that as well. I mean, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if you could. It's
I mean, I rarely even dream. I consume a lot of cannabis, so obviously they give cannabis to people with well, they give cannabis to people with PTSD for that exact reason. It stops all their nightmares, but the side effect is that you have almost no dreams that you remember at all. So yeah, it'd be something to start to phase out if I wanted it to trespass into this territory.
yeah. It's luckily though, it looks like all the bodily shit goes away when you actually die. It's like you're not actually affected by it. You see stories about senile people becoming clear-minded before they die, stuff like that.
Yes, yes.
All
What do
of
they
their
call that?
memories are still
And I
intact.
just what is it?
All of their memories, are still intact. They still care about the people they care about. It's like their personality is intact, when they leave their body. So it's I don't think the body actually affects you once you're actually dead. So like that shouldn't be a problem when you die. It's and
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, that's something else I wanted to mention. So if you imagine the Earth realm that we are in like right now as the baseline of things, like 10 out of 10 lucidity, when you're dreaming, you're usually less than 10 out of 10 lucidity. And like if you focus on your lucidity while you're lucid dreaming, you can achieve a 10 out of 10 lucidity. One way to do this is, just like stop paying attention to the dream and just like focus on your awareness. That's how I did it. It seems to work really great. Uh, Another thing is like you could, for example, rub your hands against a rock to feel the texture to like solidify the dream. If you're having trouble staying loose, like in the dream after you become lucid, so that's a way to like force yourself to not wake up. That's something
Like you're
that worked for
anchoring
me as well.
an anchor point almost.
Yeah, basically, you're putting your strong intention into like focusing on being inside the dream so you don't wake up. I had a dream where I was about to wake up. You can kind of like feel when the dream is, breaking apart. I started rubbing the rock, and like it solidified, so that's something you could do if you want to maintain the lucid dream longer. Yeah, so I was gonna mention so that usually you're less than 10 out of 10 lucid when you're lucid dreaming, or just dreaming in general. And then you have the out of body experiences where people can do meditations like clarity now, that kind of stuff, which the vegan talks about, where basically you become like 15 out of 10 lucidity, and that's basically like you're achieving more access to your true self basically. So it's my guess is that the dream world is like a lower realm of the matrix realm. So it's like just how you can be affected by drugs, like if you drink alcohol you become mentally affected by it. When you dream you become mentally affected by it. So it's kind of like a lower state. When you have an out of body experience, it's like you're less affected by your body basically. There's no hunger, and shit like that, but you're still anchored to the body in a way. That's like my guess. And then like when you die, that's like you're out of your body. But because you still have the mental image of yourself as, you know, a humanoid, you know, you have a image of your own like mental awareness, what you are, you know, like how you think and everything. You're gonna like carry that with you. But like if you focus your mind on, you know, becoming clear and everything, you can like unlock your more of your true self basically. But people usually carry that kind of shit with them whenever they die, and they don't realize that they can actually access more of their true self.
It's good stuff, man. Very profound.
Uh, you were you gonna say something, buddy?
Oh, I just said it's real. This is really good stuff, man. It's all very profound. I'm gonna need some time to take it all in and internalize.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then back to the topic of, you know, how that kind of like goes in hand, because like you might be, you know, 100,000 something whatever billion
Yeah.
even, you know, compared to lucid 10 as you are now, like when you actually regain all of yourself. And when it comes to like morals and, you know, all of those kind of things, our perspective might be so fucking different when we're actually in a true self that like being in a matrix might not even bother us at all, you know. Or
Mm.
that might be why nobody has actually even come to save us. Like it may even be possible to come save us, you know, but nobody gives
We
a shit to do it, you know. Like that's
we
possible
don't
as
we don't
well.
matter. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it might be that the experience we have doesn't matter. They might care about us personally, but this might be like, yeah, he's playing a game. Don't disturb him. Yeah, he's crying. You know, it's a horror game. What do you expect? You know, like it could be something like that. Like we just don't know. Like more than likely, like people like myself, for example, have come down here to try and help people. So like there is probably an understanding of just how hellish this place is, and they're trying to get us out of it, but like we don't know for sure, you know, like I'm just
Yeah. I
speculating
mean,
about that.
personally, I mean, just the way that I know myself, I definitely don't feel that way at all. I feel like if it uh, I don't necessarily feel like I was forced, but probably consented under some sort of duress or coercion of some variety. Because I mean, like knowing how I know myself now, there's no possible way that I would ever want to come into a realm like this. I have it's just there's just nothing here for me, and I want nothing of it.
Yeah, but I mean, in a previous life you might have been an evil soldier that loves suffering, you know, and you would have thought it makes perfect sense to come here,
Mm.
you know. So like our
Yeah,
current perspective is not necessarily what it is, you know, when we get out of here. And something funny is that, you know, if you're living your evil soldier life right now and you exit the matrix with the mindset of that soldier, then like how are you going to act when you actually leave this place? So something else that is very important is to not allow your current ego to dictate what you're going to do and how you're going to think. Like realize that you have an ego right now that is affecting you, and act rationally based on what you should be doing and not on what your ego is telling you to do. So like a person who goes through anger management classes has an ego of anger and, you know, rage and shit, but he understands on a mental like intelligence state that he shouldn't, you know, get fucking angry and beat the shit out of someone, and he, you
right.
know, can make the mental choice to act the way he should be doing. So don't allow your ego to control what you're gonna do, you know, even like in the afterlife even.
Well, I'm feeling rather intense despair right now living here, even though, like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, like my material needs are met. I live, if you were to like look in from the outside, I live what one would consider a good life. But you know, they don't know me personally, so if you don't know, you don't know. um I don't know where I was going with that, but
No, but that's completely understandable. And like,
oh, I know where I was going. I was just going to say, like, my position, or as you say, my ego right now is one of sort of like a despairing variety. And so that's why I was bringing up, like, the notion of when I get out of here, I'm not interested in any more elements of evil. Like, the realms that I'm interested are going to be all good, you know, and what, however you want to define that. Or at least the thresholds of suffering and pain and all that stuff are going to be minimized to an extreme degree.
yeah, and
Amen.
something else about that. I think you will have a better experience of true reality and eternity as a good being than you would as an evil being. Because as an evil being, there's a lot of good that you cannot experience because of your evil state of being. It's kind of
Right.
like to experience true love, you must first love. You must be a loving person to have it. Like
Yep.
you can endorphin bomb yourself with love hormones, like the light when people die, what they see, and they feel good. But that's not really the same thing as actually compassionately caring about someone.
Very true.
So I do think there's value in being good, even like let's say the solid system idea is correct, and like I was the only real being, and all you guys are fake. It's like even then I would rather be a good person than an evil person. I don't want to be some emo kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Uh,
at least on Earth here in the material form, the better your life is, directly or indirectly, the better my life is going to be, and that goes for people's children, and from the bottom all the way to the top.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get joy from helping other people. That's
Of
like
course,
a net benefit for both of us. It's a really good thing.
one of the only places I am able to extract joy from.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I have a real what do they call anhedonia? I think it's called.
what did that word mean again? I'm spacing
It,
out.
it's like
Anti-hedonist.
it's like just a hard time experiencing joy. I can experience it vicariously, but I can't feel. I have a hard time getting it directly.
Yeah, uh, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's but I mean that could also be a lot of matrix implants. Just how the brain can make it so that you don't feel joy, or it can make so that you do feel joy. So like your mental experience of things might be completely different once you're in a true state. So this might just be like a matrix implant as well. And it could also be like a scarring mentally. So like if you experience a lot of bad shit and you might not be very happy about things, that can like shut you down emotionally. That could also be
Yeah,
like on a spiritual level. So like we don't really know how deep this stuff goes. So like we kind of have to play by ear and be careful about it.
yeah,
Not
for
let
sure.
it control us. Someone asked me about what some of my affirmations will be, after I leave this matrix. I'm not 100% sure how I would do it. I would probably sit down basically and think about it before I do it, analyze it, test out some powers before I start doing anything. I don't want to start doing affirmations right away. I want to test out reality and see what the rules are before I do any affirmations, basically. The only real affirmation would be basically being shielded, like fuck off, demiurge, kind of thing. And then I would, start evaluating whether or not I want to regain my full self or not. Like even just my full mental faculties. I'm not sure I want to do that right away. Like I might just want to keep what my mental perspective of myself, the false belief basically that like limits us, like
You want to
lie and belief.
retain some. You're saying you want to retain some element of Jake.
Yeah, basically. And like yeah,
Okay.
go to my own realm, investigate reality and evaluate how much of my true self I actually want to adapt. Because like say for example that I am start investigating reality and what I actually watch was, and I start checking my monitor and everything. And it's like I realize that I'm a fucking asshole in the true sense of things. It's like, do I really want to become that again? So it's like, yeah, if I realize that my true self is something I don't have an interest in, I may just, not return to that state. I may cast that aside, and develop a new sense of myself. Like I want to investigate what I would actually become before I, become it.
Yeah, to the fullest extent that's possible for sure.
Yeah, it's like, and who's to say that my past true self is any more real than my current true self as well? It's like, why does my asshole past self have more value than my current nice self? That spends time helping people. It's like I value this one more than an asshole, Jake. So it's like, if it turns out that I was an asshole, I don't really want to return to that. It's like I'm just gonna leave that behind in that case. Like I'll still take the intelligence level if that doesn't fuck me over like Dr. Manhattan, and I become completely emotional less and everything. It's like, yeah, Yeah, I would just have to, play it by ear basically and be very careful about what I'm doing. And as an eternal being, I got eternity to figure this shit out. So as long as I'm careful and smart about what I do, it doesn't really matter if it takes a billion years to do it.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Jake. This conversation really took my conception of that afterlife state outside of like, in, I always visualized some frame, like the Earth was my frame of reference. It was going to be Earth-like in some way, and this was a very good like sort of reorientation as to how to go about thinking about this. So appreciate that.
Yeah, I think we need to be very open-minded because we don't actually know what true reality is like. So like, yeah, be
Yeah.
careful about limiting your own belief systems. Like even just a 3D space type of world might be like a 2D game, as I mentioned before.
What's your Earth realm look like?
Well, I'm probably gonna play a lot of,
Not yours, Jacob. I already
what?
know what yours looks like. Not yours.
Oh, what
Ah,
does my Earth realm look like? Wow.
Jake's is going to be lots of gay porn. We already know
oh
that.
God, don't tell them that. Now they're gonna know.
Well, mine has lots of gnomes for whatever reason. I don't know. I visualize a lot of gnomes that live there.
That's like the
Um,
gayest fantasy creature, though. Like, what the fuck, man?
Hey, some guy was actually saying in Lucid Dreaming, I can't remember if it was here or somewhere else. I think it was on a channel somewhere. And he said that they were lucid dreaming and a gnome, like straight up looking like David. A gnome came with like the red hat, blue shirt, and it's like, you shouldn't be doing this. And ever since then, he hasn't been able to. That's interesting.
very synonymous with like the machine elves. I think there's going to be a few machine elves. But no, in all seriousness, I would say, I mean, just my Earth realm, obviously, like I said, would be a much lower degree in terms of the thresholds of potential suffering, much more joy. Um, I mean, I don't know if are you asking me if is there a civilization here?
Similarization with,
Like if I were to create my own Earth-like realm, would there be inhabitants, or am I just flying around on my own, just doing my own thing?
oh, no, yeah, the floor is yours. I'm just curious because you're the first other person that's kind of honed in on like Earth but better. And since we all know what Earth is, it's kind of like the most tangible. So I'm just kind of interested to
Yeah,
sort of
well, it certainly wouldn't operate on entropy. There'd be no predation. Life would not be living off of other life. The way I envision it now. I don't even think I'd require eating unless the participant would want to. You'd be able to receive your energy just indirectly, or even if you needed energy at all. So yeah, I know that's a good question. I don't think I've completely conceptualized it yet, but all good, not bad, lots of freedom.
I was in his world building video. I got onto what is his name? Sanderson. Am I saying that right, Jake?
Yeah, Brandon Sanderson. Good beginning point for learning how to write stories.
Yeah. So the thing that I keep wondering is where's the challenge going to be? Otherwise, it seems like the opposite of here. If anybody got the chance, like it's kind of like the same thing where somebody gets 10 million and they head to the beach and they drink mojitos all day, and then eventually they get very bored, if not depressed from it, and they have to start doing something. So it's like that self actualization. Once you achieve that, um, I would even say before you achieve it, you would want to say, well, what is it that I really, really want to do? Because I think even lying on the beach and drinking mojitos all day is kind of a cop out. So Brandon Sanderson and pretty much the whole world building community is kind of interesting because it's like you want to make things interesting, um, but at the same time, it's like everybody in some regard needs like a vacation. They're like, all right, I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of stuff being so wicked. So where's like that fine line where if we're basing it on this existence, it's kind of like what would you change to make this a lot more enjoyable or more enjoyable? Um, what would you change about it? Because It's almost like there has to be an opposing force of some sort.
Right. So I mean, that's a good question. I think ultimately, if my realm, so after it becomes open and other, positive beings can enter, and they want more of a challenge, I would give them sort of like a dev console where they can sort of set the thresholds of their challenges on their own. Maybe using some of the redundancies that Jake talked about with the timers if things get too intense, where they can always come out if things they need to hit the panic button. But yeah, I'd let them set their own challenges.
Here's a thought: wouldn't it suck if everything that you kind of come up with would just be like a big ass full circle, and you're like, huh, I just created Earth again?
That would suck. But I mean, I think if you lay some ground rules, especially with respect to the hierarchies, the predation, all the bodily functions, the pain thresholds, especially like obviously there's no money, there's no need for that. I mean, it would be very. I don't know if you're familiar with like Jacques Fresco. If there's a society there, it's going to be very Venus Project like.
I almost went to go see Jacques over in Jupiter before he died back in 2012.
Wow. Yeah, he really he influenced my my entrance into this sort of genre. He was very interesting character, that's for sure.
But at the same time, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I think ultimately if humanity turns the corner somehow, I don't know how that's gonna happen, but if it ever did, at some point I see that sort of system as probably an eventuality in some way or another. Probably not exactly as how he's promoted it, but something of the sort.
My only issue with Jacques Fresco was when I inquired about going down to go see to actually go see him down in Jupiter. The entire what is that Venus project? This entire Venus project, it was like a show and tell. You would kind of go there, call it a museum or like a adult theme park, but it was something where you paid, and you paid a lot of money to go. That was the thing that really turned. It was me and a girl at the time.
Yeah.
We were talking about going down there. That turned us off, but just from man, that was a long time ago. From that point to where I am now, to me, there are a lot of things that were just kind of factually wrong, and they're kind of subtle, but at the same time very big. So his idea was that So with Jacques Fresco, his idea could easily front run something for like the technocrats, which is kind of like the situation that we're heading into now, where it's like, well, technology should be the complete arbiter of how we handle resources. And what I understand now, honestly, is that the the technocrats believe that this is kind of like a random thing. Like where we are right now is random. Where our position in, say, the universe is random, if you believe the universe. But our position is random, and nothing is necessarily made um, by design. And I completely reject that because it's obvious that something has designed this, be it for better or for worse. And ultimately, if you were to design something with living creatures in it, you're going to put enough food in there, you're going to put enough water, you're going to put enough air, at least so the damn things can live. And
For
so,
sure.
yeah, the idea of scarce resources to me is a complete misnomer. The resources are finite in that there's not an infinite amount, but you can still have a lot and still be within finity. What's the word?
You'd still
Not
be within parameters, you say.
Exactly. And so modern economics is based upon the idea that there is scarcity. And I challenge this to Jake and really anybody else. Look at any major industry. And I've actually posted one about fossil fuels. But look at any major industry and see if you can actually find something scarce in there. And the only, I want to say like high dollar, I wouldn't even call it an industry really, but the only thing I can find that's like high dollar and scarce is artwork or something that's like one of a kind. Everything else works on a system of abundance. and then there will be choke points. So red tape, things that restrict certain people from adding additional supply to meet demand. But when you talk about power or what is electricity, but power or energy, there's the word. Energy is abundant. Um, food is abundant. Land is abundant. I mean, especially where I am right now, it's like, Jesus, there are fewer people than there is land by a long shot. Air is abundant. Water is abundant. All of these things run they're basically abundant. I mean, no major industry is going to want to run on something that is scarce. They definitely want to run on something that's abundant because that means that they can always find a new supply and be able to sell it. And they want to keep selling over and over and over and over again. If Excuse me one second.
Okay, well, he's gone. I wanted to add something on that. I did get a pretty good comment on one of my world creation videos. I think it was the first one, where a guy mentioned he basically came up with this idea that instead of having a conflict world, basically you could have like a football world or something you call it. The general idea is basically that instead of conflict where you have winners and losers, you can have like adventure worlds basically, where instead of killing something, you could like compete with something, and it could be like an enjoyment for both kind of sides. Like we don't have to have the loser winner kind of like mentality that we have in this kind of world. We could create worlds where it's basically just an enjoyment on both sides,
Just
like
a
friendly
win. It's a
competition.
win.
Yeah,
It's a win-win.
yeah,
Like my time.
like playing football with your friends, instead of like
Yeah.
competing for like food or something,
Yeah.
That kind of goes in hand with my joke, half joke-ish, but like actually serious, like idea about having meat trees, and shit like that. So instead of killing animals to eat hamburgers, you could have a tree that literally grows finished hamburgers for you. You could just pluck them from the tree.
If
You know
if
that
you
was
even,
my idea, man.
That was my idea, man. Don't fucking lie.
if they want to eat, why even require eating?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I would have eating kind of like taking a treat, but like you don't gain weight or anything. Like,
Right. If you want to, go ahead, but it doesn't mean anything.
yeah, it just poofs, like away.
There, there,
Like you
there's
eat it
cert,
and it's
there's
gone.
certainly no pooping.
Oh,
Pooping's
no way, no way.
outrageous.
Or headaches or any other such bullshit things that is just a loose mechanic.
I have a cluster headache syndrome disorder, so I know all about that.
I used to have a lot of headaches as a kid. I don't have as much
Yeah,
nowadays, but it was fucking hell.
that's funny. You should mention that.
So yeah,
It's not fun.
there's a lot of good things that like that's one of the like this is not a fucking learning school, like just pure examples. Like literally you can fix this world to make it better with like 5 minutes of thinking, which just shows how evil this world is, because there's no fucking way they didn't think of it with all these fucking hundreds and thousands of years of creation or whatever.
Right, right. I've made that point to some friends as well in the past. It's just you take 5 minutes, you make it better. 30 seconds, like, oh yeah, what would you do? Like, okay, number one, everyone's telepathic.
Yeah.
Number one. So that way there's no deception.
Yeah.
No more lies, no deception. From there,
remove cancer, like remove parasites. What the fuck is wrong with you? It's
right.
remove fucking kids starving to death. What's wrong with you? It's there's so many things you could do just in a fucking instant.
Think about my idea about giving the user in that, in our own created worlds, the sort of like the dev console to create their own challenges. Does that sort of satisfy your concern in that regard?
So the dev console will be sort of like pick your own thresholds for pain or pleasure, etc.
So yeah, to the sky's limit, whatever you want to experience like with what the realm is capable of, you're free to do that. Set your own thresholds for pain, pleasure, and whatnot. But you just can't change the inherent nature of the realm itself.
Yeah, that's what made me think about what happens if you end up creating a similar experience here. So, who's to say? And I think some people think this already, is that you kind of do that already right now. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think to kind of get to the nitty gritty of it, I think more emphasis is really should be put onto, like you're saying, the actual mechanics of it. Um, so like some concepts I've thought about with Jake is I got into listening to these interrogations recently. It was like some of the worst killers, all these things, etc., where there's grief, and then the only justice that actually exists here is kind of more pain and suffering. So, example, there was a family that lost I think it was like to a drunk driver. They lost two members of their family. The system got a hold of the drunk driver. I think they're behind bars for life and no death penalty. But essentially, they're saying, I think one guy remarked, as long as that person, I know that person's suffering every single day of their life, then I'm okay. And to me, that's sort of like an overall flaw here. So imagine that, everyone kind of has their thresholds and sort of that dashboard. The general parameter of the world is that negative works in the affirmative, meaning you can kill somebody, you can hurt somebody, right? But you can't necessarily kind somebody. Like you can provide kindness, but the affirmative and sort of the stronger action is to be able to kill somebody or to hurt somebody. That's why like revenge is such a strong instinct. Or somebody gets really pissed off, they're more likely to do something out of anger than they are out of love. And so I think the redemption, being able to make things better, being able to help to fix different problems that people have actually gone through, experiences, like maybe there needs to be more empathy. That's where my kind of focus is on. Is like, how do you actually create a realm where if somebody does do something bad, they would be in a position where they can actually make it better, um, or they can do something other than sort of just sit there and suffer, and it's just like adding to the suffering in a way where if somebody did come and they were bad, by the time they left, they would be actually good. And eventually, playing everything out, it wouldn't be like a loop, like this continuous loop of like, it's kind of bad, it's better, it's best, and then
But
it gets worse.
I hear what you're saying. I still kind of want to fall back to like the design of the realm itself would inherently prevent any of the issues that you're bringing up. Like there's no killing, none of that is part of the world that I'm creating. So I don't know if what you're saying applies in that context.
Well, I think we're saying the same thing. You have parameters set up, so there's like no killing, no nothing like that. I kind of look at it more like if you're familiar with any of these anime, especially in anime, where characters may start off as being sort of a villain, doing all these terrible things, but they have some sort of redemption arc that ends up bringing the good that's actually in them to overcome the evil. And then added to that, if somebody does die, then is there a way to resurrect them? If somebody cuts off a limb, is there a way to replace the limb? Is there a way for the person to telepathically, right? You're talking about telepathy, be able to telepathically share that experience with that person to where they never want to do anything wicked or evil like that again.
I would go back again and say that probably my realm would not be appropriate for spirits that want to experience those types of experiences. There's other places for them to go. My realm just isn't about that.
Right on.
Yeah. I don't really know how else to answer. I hear what you're saying, but this is kind of like how I just want to fall back to like that's just not allowed where we are right now. And if you want to experience that, no judgment, but you can't do it here because it's not part of the rules or like the part of the structure. This is you're in the good place right now. If you want to go be a samurai somewhere, you got to go create your own realm where samurais exist, or go elsewhere. We just wear togas and feed each other grapes all day.
That's the hedonistic realm, man.
Right.
Are you familiar with Futurama?
A little bit. Yeah.
Oh man, there's a robot character on there named Hedon. I think it's like Hedonist Bot or something. Let me pull it up. I'll paste it in the chat.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people recommend that they think I'd like it, so I definitely gotta catch up on it and watch some more shows.
But by the way, while you looked that up, I kind of wanted to add on to the whole hedonistic thing. It
Yeah,
wouldn't surprise me at all if when a lot of people leave the Matrix, they're basically gonna make their own realm, which is basically like a chair or something, and then like they just sit down and they just endorphin bomb themselves for eternity. And I just want to like make a mention about don't get stuck in the field of just like pleasure release type of thing. Don't allow yourself to just be stuck for eternity, just like pleasurizing yourself.
no, I'm not. I'm sorry if I gave that vibe off. That's
No, no,
definitely
no,
not
no,
my.
no.
I
I
was
just
just
wanted to
making a
mention it.
joke when I said that about the grapes and shit. I'm just trying to be
Yeah,
stupid.
it's I think a lot of people might get stuck in that and not want to leave, kind of like getting hit by the light when they die and being unable to move away from it. Like,
Right.
it's fine if that's what you want to experience for eternity, but like me personally, I am repulsed by the idea of a pleasure chair. I saw a anime called Darling in the Franxx, and they have like a machine that endorphin bombs old people, to make them feel good, and that's like their existence. And that was just a hell like vibe that
Sort
I
of
got from
sort
that.
of ghastly, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But like, so whenever I, get some kind of like pleasure or something from my realm, I want there to be like a story in it, and I don't want to limit my own eternal existence, to some fucking Earth-like realm, where I just endorphin bomb myself like the light or whatever.
I think too, like in both of our realms, the baseline level of pleasure is already so high that the necessity for something that extreme just isn't. It's just not relevant. A pleasure chair, it's not. It's just doesn't apply to a realm that I would create. It's you're feeling good enough already.
Yeah, it's I mean, and even like you might actually want some kind of suffering just to like get the contrast as well, but like you don't have to
Sure,
fucking.
that's why you give them the dev console and they can control how much they feel, right?
Yeah, but it's like you
Frank,
don't have to break a leg to, feel bad at some point. Like you can have, like, yeah, if you play a game where it's like one of the AI characters that you make, like if the character dies in your game, then they're gone and you're not allowed to reset them, because that's the rules of the game that you're playing. It's like playing a game of hardcore, like you don't restart it. So it's like you might really like that character and enjoy spending time with them. So like a pain could be losing that character in your adventure game. Like if you play a Lord of the Rings story and Boromir dies or something, and you really liked Boromir, that could be like the pain stimulator in that story. But like you don't have to break a leg and feel a bunch of pain or whatever, or have a headache or some other shit.
right.
So like it's good to have some because if it's only pleasure, it might get kind of boring, after a while. So you kind of like want to mix it up a bit. It's I mean the contrast of things do like amplify things as well.
I don't think you guys are gonna like my realm.
I mean it might be cool. I mean we all have our own preferences, and there's no guarantee that our current preference will be what it will be later on. So.
Yeah, I mean, you could ask me again in 10 years and my answer might be different. I think just in my current state with all the shit, the headaches and all sorts of bullshit, I'm ready to leave into a good place at this point, and the notions of pain and conflict and competition and all this bullshit just don't interest me right now.
Yeah, that might be this
Yeah.
case as well. And like
Give
maybe
me
you want
give me
to
give me
exit that.
10 million years in infinity and my answer might change, right?
Yeah, basically, you might want to, vary your existence. So sometimes you just go into like a voidless, like just pure bliss kind of state, or just relaxing, chilling for a while, and then you play an action game for a while. Like, it might vary
Go
what you want to do.
go hibernate.
Yeah, kind of like that. Just chillax for a moment. Like, okay, that was a lot of experiences. Let me just chillax for a moment. Not experience anything for a while. Just be at the rest. Kind of, who knows? It's kind of like when you had a long day, you don't put on the TV, you just sit down in the chair for a moment and relax for a bit, before you do something.
What was your, I guess, without giving up who you are, in case Jake decides to be lazy and make a YouTube video out of this? What was your background, without giving away too much? Did you see combat or something?
1 second, guys. Sorry.
I I can edit shit out if you mention it to me. Like on my recording, I can see the timestamps. I can just go back to that, later on to edit it out if you don't want something in. But then, like, you gotta clarify that to me. Since he went be right back mode, I wanted to add something else. We got a comment on the no microphone chat, talking about the potential of inserted memories, like false memories, kind of like the Inception movies, where people make someone think or remember something that isn't like from themselves. Something that is possible is that, so you die, you exit the matrix, or you're about to exit the matrix, make your own realms or something. You might actually start remembering past memories that may be like infiltrated or false memories. So, for example, say that in a previous lifetime the matrix told you a lie about the secret way of exiting the matrix, or they gave you memories about a bunch of fake NPC AI characters that they told you were spirited beings, in the astral realms. That's like your spirit family or something. So, like, you could be basically hit by false memories or lies. So don't take any like information or whatever as a guarantee of actual being truth. And that includes shit that you learn when you leave this place. Just because you're, gaining access to your fuller self or memories or information about true reality, there's no guarantee that those things are actually accurate. So you need to be careful about the information you take in and what you actually do with it, which is another reason for, testing shit out and being careful and always setting up, safety mechanisms. So it's like, if you interact with other beings, you should have an AI system to, warn you basically, or pull you out of it, if something happens, stuff like that. So just be very careful about what you accept as truth. I mean, I don't have any fears of, uninstalling on my own. Like, that's probably the way I will go at some point. Because, like, I prefer meditating, affirming my intentions, my exit plan and everything, and then, like, exiting on my own terms, rather than, randomly dying in my sleep or getting hit by a car.
Right.
Yeah, and also the ability to be consciously aware that now I'm dying. Like, I want that when I'm dying. I don't want
Yeah,
to
and
accidentally get killed and not realize it before I'm actually dead. Like, I don't want to get hit in the
right.
head really hard and die instantly and not be aware that I was gonna die there.
Do you think there's a qualitative difference in the afterlife experience based on the manner of death? I was just curious if you thought there was any difference in like the afterlife, the post-death experience based on like the manner of death. Is there going to be a difference from some guy who flings himself off a cliff versus a guy who dies in his sleep versus a guy or a girl who
Depends on their belief system.
right?
But by the way,
Exactly.
I
I
just
would
want to
say.
make sure that you're okay with your voice being recorded.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, all
perfectly.
good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Something that
Or
I've.
somebody dying in war, getting blown up spontaneously, just all the things you can think of on your own.
Oh yeah. There's probably a lot of difference, especially for people who aren't aware of like the soul trap and what they actually are and so on.
They're going to end up in a consensus heaven like William Buhlman talks about in all his books, where you're with a bunch of Jews or a bunch of Christians and you still think you're alive and you still have to be little me in the church and obeying everything. In his books, like he is next to his mom because he had cancer and I guess he went through NDE type experience and he floats out of the church and everybody's calling him a heathen, right? Because within his NDE, he had the power to rise above that because he wasn't Christian. So
Yeah, William Bullman, right?
yeah, William Bullman's materials.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
another, fellow of the Monroe Institute, but a lot of his
Mhm.
materials go into the living and dying process. And he talks about having this document where you talk about how you want to die, right? And in
Yeah.
which way, and what you want said, and what you want done to your body. Like he's all about that. His wife is like
Yeah.
a palliative care nurse, so
Yeah, I've
some of
seen
that
a
stuff is quite
couple
helpful.
couple of his videos. I think I've seen just perusing, but
There's a question of do we want to be cremated or do we want to be buried? Do you want to be in one of those earth pods? Like, do you guys have a preference on that? Because the Tibetans say you have to be burned.
Earn it.
yeah,
Christians say you have to be buried.
I was going to say I'd like to be cremated. I don't care what they do with my ashes as long as I want to be dissolved.
I like the dynamite option. I think that one is funny. I just kind of like it.
A little bit of you everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's those new Earth pods. Throw you in a tarp and make you into a tree.
Right. Yeah, my buddy wants to become a redwood.
Yeah, there you
I,
go.
I
Life
originally
goals.
was thinking the tree option.
But I mean, I told. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, like, if he becomes a redwood, that means he's still like you're still an earth, and man, like you're here for a long time. I don't know if I could tolerate being a redwood here for that long. Whatever kind of qualitative experience a redwood has.
Funerals are so expensive. That's a whole industry, right? It all started with Lincoln. You guys know the history of funerals. How it wasn't really a big deal until Lincoln, and they paraded him all through the U.S. and discovered it could be a huge, multi-billion-million-dollar industry.
Pretty
Before
sick.
that, funerals were very private. They took place in homes. They would have viewing time. Death was, because it happened so often, it was sanitized and it was just part of life, right? And then after the 1860s, it developed this whole fear of death and what it is, and we can make it to an industry, and death has to be sanitized and taken off the table, and it's sick and it's mysterious, and now we can have horror movies. So in the mid 1800s, that just wasn't the case. So they capitalized on people's fears. And then how people used to be buried alive, and the rich people got bells so they could awaken their family to get them the hell out of there before they suffocated, because they didn't check for breathing or a pulse.
Oh yeah, that's a real thing, like horror stories
yeah.
came from that with like the church bells, like from the grave that starts ringing because someone is still alive
Yeah, because
underneath.
somebody was buried alive because they didn't check for a pulse or breathing. They were in a coma.
Yeah, that stuff still happens today. Like people wake up in morgues and shit, and they're about to be cremated.
Fuck.
Yeah, imagine waking up just before you're cremated, and like you start hearing screaming inside.
That was a Christina Ricci
Oh,
movie
man.
with Liam Neeson. It freaked the shit out of me. I can't remember the title of it, but that's the premise, that she's still freaking alive, but
Oh, you
it's
mean
like
the
only
one
he can talk to her.
where the guy tells her she's dead? Like, and she looks like a
Yeah.
corpse.
Yeah, and he's gonna start carving her. It's like she's still there, but it's like it's her astral body he's talking to or something. That movie freaked the frick
No.
out of me.
She was just alive, but she was drugged so that she was really cold and everything. But then she notices
Yeah.
that her breath leaves a mark on like a window or something, and then she realizes
Yeah, he's
she's
like a
alive.
psychopath that has her drugged. Yeah, that's right.
It's a fucked up movie.
Really fucked up. Why would Liam
Nice
Neeson
body,
do
though.
that? The Taken movies were so good. Come on, Liam.
Let's see. We got another question here, by the way, about that. So I'll read it. Question. So if our bodies run hormones while hosting part of a real being, it's fair to assume that when we experience the good here as justice, fairness, or other of its forms, that experience is part of hormonal. That experience is part hormonal, part spiritual, right? I tend to imagine that taking a look at this might lead to sorry, to relevant questions. Because when we are out of here, we're hormonally free, I assume. So basically, when I had my OBE experience, I didn't have bodily impulses. And when I listen to near-death experiences, and stuff like that, it seems like people still have their mental presets, basically. So like, I care about my friend, I have fear, all that kind of shit. So it is possible that we do have hormonal or similar experiences and like personality, fear, joy, all those kind of things that are similar to the hormonal states of the body. So it might kind of be like the body is a reflection of our true self in a way. So like you can experience, fear, joy, happiness, love, and all that kind of state in like your true state. And then
well, in my OBEs, if you have any kind of real emotion, you snap back into body. That's my experience. But I do still have my same personality and my same logic, and I kind of have an idea of who I am and everything. That's all there in the back of my mind. So Buhlman says we take on the quality of consciousness we leave with, right? That's why it's so important what we're doing right now, gathering data, right? So we've got the best worldview before we leave.
Yeah, and so like my imagine basically that it might be like either we just bring everything with us basically, and that's not our true state at all, or maybe some of it is our true state, and then you also have the matrix add-ons while you're inside the body. So, for example, you might be a really peaceful spirit in nature, but while you're inside this body of yours, you have anger management issues. So, like the anger management issues is just a hormone add on to your personality, but that's not your actual selves when you leave the
It's
body.
trauma.
Yeah, so like, or just like a drug basically by the body. But when you leave the body, that might not come with you, but your belief systems and everything is gonna come with you because you bring those
Yeah,
things
because
with
you're
you.
still a Buddhist and you're looking for the hell realms and the feather to weigh you. So that's what you see.
Yeah, and mentioning that because we talked about that. Another thing is the movie "What Dreams May Come," which I referenced in my escape guide video. Uh, the main character's wife creates her own hell-like experience for herself because her belief is that she deserves it. So like our belief systems can really alter what we experience when we leave this place because you can basically manifest shit for yourself, not just like the shared realms, like consensus realms, but also like what you create for yourself or what you give other entities or like the matrix maker, like permission to do to you. So it's very important that you maintain, control over your own mind so you don't let it control you.
So we kept a journal, and my father was dying because he took about a year and a half to die. And I remember him saying that there was a very dark place, and he saw these hellish realms. And then he said there was a really light, beautiful, wonderful place. So he kept flashing in between. And then the Matrix sent this guide called Jennifer Orr, basically that was leading through the final details. So he had been a JW for most of his life, but he didn't really have any religion or anything. But it's like the Matrix keyed into that, and Interstage left this guide to help him through the dying process, right?
Oh yeah, and it's like if you look at something, that is a consent form to observe something because you're choosing to look at it. So like if you look at me, I could flash you a picture or a word or something which could affect you in some kind of way. I might scare you, or make you sad, happy, or whatever. It's like everything you
But
do,
is the
believe, and
Matrix
choose.
responsive? So does is the Matrix responsive to who we are in our state of consciousness? And sometimes I'll be somewhere there's nothing, and then a song comes that will trigger me, right? Out of nowhere. What the hell is that? Have you guys had those experiences?
I mean, I've had similar stuff like that. I think the Matrix adapts itself to the real beings who are experiencing it. Like I really do think that it's very likely that the Matrix doesn't simulate shit that we're not observing. So like, yeah, the roads are completely clear unless you're driving on them.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense for the Matrix to be set up that way. And I'm not talking about processing power. I don't think it lacks processing power. But like, if you put all of the NPC characters in motion and they're all, affecting each other and being simulated, that would make it a lot more difficult, to like change the simulation out depending on what it needs to happen than if you just simulate the vicinity of the real person. Because then, like, if another being that is supposed to interact with one person and so on is already doing something that affects this thing and that complicates things. So by just simulating the vicinity of the person, it becomes a lot easier to manipulate shit, to mess with people and so on, which explains why for example a lot of people can't recall seeing their neighbors bring groceries home. Like a lot of people have never seen that before. There's like no recollection of that ever happening. That is probably because the neighbors are people that we don't usually interact with, and so the Matrix doesn't simulate them to the same extent that they would do a family member. So like if I
Good
go
point.
and yeah, so if I go and visit my sister's home, I will see her bring in groceries because she's close enough in the simulation for that to be processed.
So that program exists for you because it's been built into your algorithm because it's always happening. But if we do something unexpected and have an expectation, it's like it doesn't happen because it's not programmed.
Yeah, basically, like so the Matrix adapts itself. It's kind of like in the Truman Show when he runs into the wrong building and he sees the film crew. It's like, oh
Yeah,
shit,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. Which makes sense why I got shut down for showing that film. Usually, I show it, but this year the admin walks in at the same time I'm showing this, and no, 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 we can't have this film. Nope, nope, nope. But I've shown it every year. Nope, 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 can't do it.
oh yeah, I mean, like literally the first time I recorded while walking outside, a alarm hit. And it's like, and then when I walked past the area where the alarm went off, it stopped ringing. Because now I was gonna walk away from it. And it's like the Matrix tried to stop me from doing my video. But I was just like, I'm gonna do it anyway. like the Matrix does a lot of bullshittery, you know, and simulates based on what it needs to do.
I've had similar experiences. You want to tell somebody something important, and then a distraction pops up. Doorbell rings, dog barks, whatever, you know.
Yeah, or
I
like how
definitely feel
vegan
like it's
always lags when he says something important, you know, like that is
yeah.
another Matrix
And then you
bullshittery.
forget what you wanted to tell them.
Yeah,
So yeah, I definitely felt like it's tried to block me in certain ways.
So if 10% of this entire realm is real people, is it tailor made to those of us in the whole holodeck here that are actually real spirits?
I
Right?
mean
I don't want to say souls because of Soul Trap, but yeah.
in the Star Trek universe, you know, when they go into the holodeck, each person inside the holodeck has its own simulation playing out while they're inside the holodeck. So you can
Exactly.
have two people on each side of the room
Yeah.
experiencing different areas, you know, and they can like go and meet and separate and everything.
I think Roddenberry had a lot of insides about what actually goes on, and he put it into Star Trek. And some people say he received it from these higher order beings or something that told him all this shit to put out there. But it is kind of funny how the iPad came out on Star Trek in '87, right? It's like identical to what we had, right? Many years later. So there's a lot of tech on there that we now have. Did you guys ever like Star Trek growing up as a kid? Like I felt like that was my real family when I was watching it. I felt real huge connection to it.
I was inspired
Especially
by
the next
Star
gen.
Trek. It's
What's that?
I was inspired by Star Trek before I learned
Yeah,
about the spirituality, you know, like soul
same
trap
here.
topics. Star Trek was my like, you know, let's bring humanity to a better stage kind of like inspiration, and then that died out when I learned more about reality.
There's still a hierarchy, but it's sure a hell of a lot better than this one. So I saw hope in everything I saw horrible in reality, and they were fixing it on Star Trek. So gave me some hope, honestly.
Yeah, it's like this is what we could develop, and we could become even better than that, you know. But then like you realize what this world is.
Yeah,
Well, I think
if you had
too,
some knowledge and
people
depth.
had a much broader imagination back then too, with all like the I think the quality of entertainment was a little bit of a higher consciousness, not much, but a little bit. And I think people's comprehension of like what was really possible was a lot broader. Now if you want to talk about advanced stuff with people or a cooperative society or anything outside of their frame of reference, they just they don't get it. They're not
They
interested.
swipe left. I don't like that. Their
Yeah.
attention span is nothing. People can't read essays anymore, or even
No.
write them for that matter. They don't have any skills.
And they can't imagine, and they're and I mean, and can you blame them? Look at the incentive structure. Like look at how our lives are engineered in like the worst way possible.
Yeah, you're paying your income you make to all of these different tax authorities with the hope your life will be better, but it's still shitty because they don't fix anything.
Right.
The roads are still broken, even though you're paying all these taxes. Where does that money go?
Right. Nothing
Right?
ever gets better. Right.
It's all
Nothing ever.
artificial. You guys probably saw the video Solar Freaking Roadways. It was going around on YouTube where Scott and Julie Brewster came up with a whole way to power everything. There's never going to be snow on a road. And they've got these kind of fiber optic cables underneath the roadways. And they did a whole test track in California, a couple kilometers, and made this whole system work. It's going to fix everything with the cement and everything. And it's never going to fly because the world's corrupt.
Was that the thing with like they were like honeycomb shaped?
Yeah, they were honeycomb shaped. That was it.
I
And
thought that was
they
a
predict
scam.
like you can have like any
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
what I heard
cord on
too.
it because they've got lights on them, and they predict that there's going to be an animal on the road so you don't hit it, and they melt all the snow. Like they're just multifunctional, these roads.
Now I didn't know that was a thing until somebody pointed out it was a thing. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's a thing. Yeah, that's the big issue. Is like my hypothesis is that there's a layer of good that was initially created, and I can go into reasons why that is. But then there were sort of like these added layers. So like when Jake, I think, speaks about keeping a closed realm and not letting anybody in, I think that's actually with good merit for him to say that, because it seems like there's like a legitimate good interest, and then there's also a legitimate bad interest, and whatever side source starts to kind of get out of whack, And we'll notice it whenever it's sort of a good thing that starts to get out of whack. Meaning things start getting too good, then they kind of get looped around. Like I think Jake said just now, I heard that was a scam. Maybe it was, but it'll be these sort of things that are coming up either through grassroots or some sort of movement, and then the movement gets water thrown all on it, and all of a sudden you're kind of coming back. Well, that was shit. This is shitty, and it's this big loop that comes around. And I think that's one of my biggest gripes with this place is there's almost like a guarantee where if anything gets too good, we're just going to make it bad. And so there's
Yes.
never a straight line towards something. It's like this big ass loop that keeps happening. The loop is sort of synonymous with like the days and the nights. Everything is just looping around. History is repeating itself, maybe not repeating, but rhyming. That's my biggest gripe with this place.
Yeah, if it gets too good, then it's going to get bad because things are too good. They got to keep you at a low angle of despair.
It's a suffering realm. You're not meant to be happy here.
But some people seem to have, I mentioned Claire Wineline in the chat. She was someone who just had this unbelievable, optimistic, positive attitude, even though she's bloody coughing up her lungs every day. And she eventually died when she had her lung transplant. But just an unbelievable level of optimism, and she wasn't even Christian. It didn't appear that anyway, but she kept up through her whole 20 years of the shittiest life ever. Like, some people get a way bigger, hand dealt to them. And some do really well, and some end up like in a terrible mental state. So yeah, it's really, life is like such chance, it seems.
Well, you know what? Since we're speaking of Star Trek, the Kobayashi Maru, if anybody's familiar with that.
Oh yeah, I am. Kirk's challenge there at Starfleet.
Right, it's the unwinnable simulation.
Correct.
Oh, is it?
You've heard of the Kobayashi Maru. I know I've mentioned that to you, Jake.
Yeah, I was making a joke, like, oh, is it?
Exactly.
You better be joking.
Yeah, did you know that the greedy like capitalist race actually like beat the game as well? Like one of the characters, like started talking about economics and shit, and the program like crashed because of it. Couldn't like handle it.
Wait, say this again?
Well, one of the those the race that's known for doing economy shit, like they have
No, I don't know shit about Star Trek unless it's one of the movies, either new or old.
Yeah, but there's
Please,
like this greedy race, that has like the rules of economics and shit, and one of those characters did the test and started talking about economics instead, and like the system couldn't handle it because it wasn't advanced enough, so like beat it that way. It's like talking intelligently to an AI,
Kind of makes sense, man. Economics is, it's such bullshit, man. There's some kind of straightforward things, but the entire thing is built upon a lot of bullshit, like a lot of bullshit. For anybody who's interested, I posted a few things in the voice chat regarding that. I should actually probably move it over to the actual economics channel. But yeah, modern economics is it's basically a way to lie about almost everything. It lies about scarcity when there isn't scarcity. Lies about tragedy of the commons, if you've ever heard that. And really quickly on that, essentially in Europe, I know, or in England, I should say, there were laws that protected the public commons, otherwise known as which would be public grounds here. But instead of having just like parks and things for recreation and pleasure, it was a place where you could actually go and collect firewood. So imagine if you went to a park today and you started gathering firewood, like how quickly you'd be asked to leave or arrested, right? But this is a place where you could go and whatever the natural resources were, you could obtain those. And comes out this argument saying, or at least more recently, this argument that they teach you in economics, which is that there's a tragedy of the commons, where if you have a natural resource, so like a lake, fish in it, or trees, if you do not have private property, meaning if not one person or one group is in control of that, then everyone that uses it will use it in their own best interest, meaning that they will go there and they'll try to use everything. But the biggest flaw in that is that it wouldn't matter if it's owned by an individual or if it's publicly owned, meaning everyone has access to it, because a bad actor is going to be a bad actor. And what's even more than that is that we find most of the bad actors will come with a capitalistic intent, meaning that they're going to come there and they're going to see the fish and the trees, and they're not going to see fish and trees. They're going to see commodities, or they're going to see something that they can actually go and turn into dollars, which kind of moronically, if they go and they turn them into dollars or into currency, the currency is there so that they can actually go and buy literally fish or some sort of food and fuel itself. So I find that even the tragedy of the commons, which is actually a big foothold for the way capitalism's set up now. I'm not against markets. I'm not against trading. I'm not against money. But the way that we have the system set up, that is the only way where you can corner somebody or corner a group of people to say, all right, if you don't work in my factory, if you don't work in his factory, you can starve. If you don't rent from me, or if you don't rent from this guy, then fine, live on the street.
I mean, I've had thoughts about wanting to just like grab a piece of land, like farm and shit, but like you can't do that. And even if you bought a land, you would have to pay taxes, so you couldn't become self-reliant because you have to have a job or you're gonna lose your land. It's impossible to just do that kind of shit on your own.
Right.
Yeah.
I had the same epiphany. It's like it didn't matter how much money you had. It was the fact that whatever money you do get, they can shift the tax code and basically put a certain um, group of people back to work, because the way things are set up is that there has to be, under this current system, there has to be somebody who's going to push the wheels or turn the wheels so that a certain other people will be able to ride the rides. Like there has to be a serving class under this sort of paradigm.
Unless you go be a Amish or a Hutterite, right? But then you got to live under their rules.
Don't Amish pay taxes though?
Most likely,
I mean,
somehow.
they do sell a lot of like Amish gear and some food and shit like that. Like you can find a lot of good like Amish tools and little
And you have to have
trinkets.
16 kids, and you only get a grade 4 education, and you have to do inbreeding. It's a whole other ball of wax.
By the way, the Amish people, as things are going, are gonna be the majority in America. Very shortly, because Americans aren't having any kids and they're having a shitload of kids. So they're gonna like spread out, like the plague and take over everything.
No, man, minorities are still having kids. Most of the brown
Yeah, I
people are
guess.
still having them. Yeah.
So, but they're I think they're the biggest group in America, so they're like gonna be the majority pretty
When they
soon.
post the population, though, you guys think they're lying to us about how many people actually exist?
Yes.
Probably.
I think
Yes. On
100%.
so many levels. On so many levels.
Yeah,
Um,
they're lying about everything, of course, especially population. Sure.
It's kind of like a a philosophy thing as well. I don't want to make money off of spreading, the truth basically. Like I want to keep it non-monetizable so that it's about teaching people how to escape the matrix, not about me making money. I don't want to put
man,
any incentive on myself to be popular over telling the truth, that kind of stuff.
see, you need to go have words with Evan Alexander, Anita Morjani,
Johnny.
Brandon Batts, I think is his name. Yeah, all these people. They come back. First thing they do is start booking speaking arrangements for a pretty
Speaking
penny and
for
selling books. Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not. Eventually, I'm probably gonna make a written, escape guide with like everything in it, and just put it in the public domain and not like charge anything of it, just so it's there for eternity.
Yes. Put it in the commons.
Yeah, because then it's like public domain, so like it belongs to everyone.
I'll do things to help people, but yeah, the whole money thing just really. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I enjoy making money, but as far as like attaching my quote unquote physical survival to what I can extract from somebody, not interested. I have ways of getting money, but that's like strictly getting money. It's not trying to help somebody. Oh, I care about you, and then that'll be $59.99 by the way.
Yeah, sadly, too many of these spiritual teachers become all about the money and the commission and not about people.
and then a lot of their followers. So I used to follow. I won't mention his name again. I already did. It was a guy on YouTube, and he would do. He was like one of the first spiritual kind of guys before the guru term had gotten thrown around. So this was like early 2012 was the earliest I found him, or somebody else found him actually, and pointed me to him. And his appearance from those first videos, I think he calls them the classics on his playlist now. They were essentially not bad information. It was pretty good information. And he ended up having a potluck. So the girl I was seeing at the time, she was like, "Ooh, he's having a potluck." So we looked into it, and the guy was charging, I think it was $59.99 per person to come out to this potluck. And he doesn't mention it until the very end, as he's getting ready to do his closing. He says, "Oh, and by the way, it's going to be $59.99 per person. Not a big fee, kind of small. Everyone can make it. Let's come together, you know." And it just completely turned me off from it. Years later, now he's probably one of the biggest gurus on YouTube with catchphrases. And if anybody knows about the mega churches in the southeast U.S., I won't say he has that much money, but he's starting to dress like those guys. You know, it's sort of a spiritual spin on it now.
I've um I've always had a bit of a like a mental block to like because if you think this is a if you think this is a soul trap, you know, so like nothing in this world really matters in that sense. Why do you need money? You know, like is riches and stuff like that really that like attractive? Because it's like I try to build detachment to this world.
Hey,
You
let me
know,
help you out with that detachment, man. Go ahead and send me 100 Swedish krones or whatever your currency is.
that's my fucking fruit money for this whole month. You know, it's I'm kind of poor. You know.
Well, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. It's the fact that, I mean, you just mentioned it right there. Why do we have it? Well, because we still need these things. Like, don't
Yeah,
forget
yeah,
that
yeah. I
if
understand
you're
that
not
stuff,
a,
but like, if you're already well financially set, then why would you put the ultimate information about reality under a payroll?
because look, this isn't a defense of them, but rule number one for being wealthy and influential is to remain wealthy and influential, period. If you actually look at the very simple mechanism, like try to simplify, like how does a person under this very particular form of capitalism or whatever you want to call it, how do they remain rich? Be it capitalism, fascism, whatever. It's a simple mechanism. Okay, you acquire some sort of wealth. You exchange that for real wealth, meaning like the stuff that was call it God given or creation given, meaning air, water, food, energy, precious metal, shiny things. You start to move up Maslow's hierarchy. But the biggest part is that you have to retain that wealth. And in order to retain that wealth, it's a very simple thing. You don't spend your own money, you make them spend it. Okay. That's why you always have this thing where taxes get paid mostly by some sort of middle class level below you. You take your money, you move it offshore, you have tax loopholes, etc. And then you use that money, a percentage of that money, to kind of satiate the lower rungs of society. You know, you'll build them roads, but they won't be great roads, and you'll keep the best roads for your neighborhoods. Okay, you'll give yourself tax breaks for the things that you want to do, but the whole idea is that you acquire wealth, you acquire real assets, and then you don't spend it. You let other people spend it for you.
I mean, I understand that kind of stuff, but it's like if someone makes a escape guide to the Matrix and it's like they put it on their payroll, then I don't know. That just seems morally wrong to me in a way.
I mean, do you live like a very minimalist kind of lifestyle right now, Jake?
Yeah, kind of like by default. I don't have a lot of money,
Okay.
so
Not by choice.
yeah, basically. But it's like I I wouldn't put the ultimate knowledge to the universe on their payroll so that I can eat cheeseburgers every day. You know, like no, no way. It's like as long as I have enough to survive, so I can keep doing my work, then it's like I'm not gonna put anything under a payroll. Not so I can, swag out, my life a little better. Like that's not what I, consider valuable. It's better to just let people have the infinite knowledge of the universe. I don't know. It's I mean, if we're eternal beings, like Jesus Christ, just let people know the information. Don't charge people for removing, bad chakras or something, or learning about the key information. Just let them know that shit, and you can use those brag points in, the afterlife or something. It's like it's really that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, a lot more,
No, if you're trying to profit on people's suffering, because a lot of people who are in terrible circumstances spend their last dollar on some spiritual teacher to help them, right?
Isn't that
And
what
it's
the
like
old
their
church
piranhas.
did? They would make poor people pay money to like guarantee they wouldn't go to purgatory.
Yeah, that's what they teach in history, that they had to buy these indulgences from the church during the
Catholic Church,
Renaissance,
yeah.
before Martin Luther started Lutheranism, and he stopped these indulgences, and he said, you can't be selling these peasants these tickets into heaven. Like, this is garbage. We got to reform the church. We got to change. He didn't want to stop Catholicism, but he definitely wanted to reform it, because you just can't take from poor people and not have a consequence. So he ended up having that 99 Theses nailed to the wall of the church with all the reforms he wanted, right? And basically they threatened to kill him, but they said, basically, if you go off and shut up and live on house arrest, we'll leave you alone. But eventually he ended up dying. I think he was killed under mysterious circumstances. He died.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't want to morally denounce anyone that, makes money off, good stuff. Like it's fine, but it's like that's not me personally.
well, I think it's really a thing that I notice with somebody who's very legitimate about what they believe in and things that they say. They're going to reflect those qualities, you know. And anybody who's too sheepish or too ignorant to realize that, fine, go throw away your money, go give it to them. But the truth is that the everybody who's not in an elite, or I want to say most people who are probably in the middle, don't realize the true value of themselves. So when you say things like an infinite being, it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. But in a very concrete and not even getting into sort of the, I won't call it woo, but kind of getting, just in simplistic terms, okay, the highest elites of this country of the world, they absolutely understand the value of everybody at the very bottom. They completely understand that. If they're in any sort of position of control and really to make decisions, they absolutely do understand that. Otherwise, in my opinion, they probably would have lined everybody up and just shot them. Okay. The value of having a labor force is so incredibly important if you want to be able to have this version of capitalism. You know, would you rather? My question I always asks: would you rather have, say, like $100 million, or would you rather be able to have 100 million slaves? Would you rather have 100 million people, or even just a million people? Would you rather have those followers that are willing to do almost anything? And it's like, well, yeah, you'd rather have that because why? They're going to be able to use their call it their infinite energy, until the day they die or they're incapacitated. They're going to be able to do things for you consistently, over and over and over, and well beyond what any sort of dollar amount might be able to come back, be able to be returned to you. A person that's willing to do things for you, or a slave, somebody that's going to come over to your house, you take a shit in the middle of the floor, they're willing to clean it up for you. It's so invaluable, and I think that's important because they pretty much have fooled the majority of people here in the sense of being an infinite being, sure, but they've also fooled people here that have two arms, two legs, and their faculties about them that somehow that they are poor.
I don't know. I'm still not gonna get taking any money for the services I give. It's all gonna be free.
Well, good man. That means you understand the value of people. The real value.
There's also an inner sense of what's right or wrong, like universally. Like, I would have trouble living with myself if I cheated people willfully, knowing exactly what I'm doing. I just couldn't live with myself. Maybe you guys have that sort of altruism too. It's just it's innately in me.
Isn't that funny? Like almost, every now and then you'll get someone they just won the lottery or whatnot. But there's really like a turning point where you have to say, hey, am I willing to sell my soul? Or am I willing to scam people? Because there are a lot of fools out there. Am I willing to scam people just for the bucks? Like, am I really willing to do that?
Yeah,
PC's worth,
I'm not
no problem.
willing to do anything like that.
I think there's like a certain value system that comes with monetary economics, and it just corrupts everything that it touches because it fucks up the incentive system of everything from bottom to top. Everyone's just out for themselves, trying to nickel and dime and scam and hustle. And I think, it's pretty much the reflection of the world around us right now.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I don't even want to take donations. Because, like, if I have a money incentive for people to like me, then that's an incentive to say shit that people are gonna like rather than what's actually true and is gonna help them. I'd rather be unpopular and help people, than be popular and not help people.
I completely agree. It's called having a backbone.
I mean, overall, if people want to have subscribers and have a business and do whatever they want to do, that's up to them, and it's fine. Everybody needs to make a living and eat and all that stuff. But I just think at a very fundamental level that money in of itself is a very compromising thing, and they've said before it's the root of all evil, and I think there's a literal sense to that, with it being a corrupter of values, and even worse, the corruption of incentives.
Yeah, for
From
enough money,
for,
people are willing to do anything.
on every level too, like on like just like on the familial level, like between like people in the same household, in communities, all I bet you all the way up to like the very top of the capstone in secret societies that want to shift billions over there, and the other side wants to shift billions over there to the other side, and there's intra arguments in that way. And I think it's been a real blight on humanity overall, and we could have done a lot better without it.
You guys have heard of those social experiments where they, just because authority told them to do something, they were causing people pain, like with electric shocks, and just because authority told them, it wasn't even monetary based, it was just based on someone in authority. And most people were willing to deliver pain because someone in authority told them to do so. So that's also like how much integrity do you have, right, as a human?
Yeah, those people are going to be shown their life reviews, given the empathetic life review, where you have to live out that shock now.
So part of this reality, I want to think that even though our memories have been wiped, we don't have an understanding, but you have this innate knowledge of who you are as a being, of what innately is right and wrong, and it's a test, and that if you follow that or you don't follow that, and the test is within you to feel what's right or wrong, right? And I know I'd certainly feel shitty if I wronged somebody and stole somebody's wallet and spent all their money and partied all night. I feel like shit. I couldn't do it.
Where do you think that value system came from? You think that was inherent within you, or it was sort of molded?
It's within me. It's within me. I mean, it was, my mother had, values and all that and passed them on to me, but ultimately I've known people that were in the same religion I was in, and they've got no morals and values, anything. Like, I'm innately a good person, right? Not in the sense that, oh, look at me, I'm good, but that I do the right thing even when it's insanely difficult.
So hypothetically speaking, if you were adopted to a different family with a foreign culture or whatever, use your thought experiment, use your imagination, you think you would have turned out basically the same in terms of spirit and values?
Yeah, because that's innately who I am as a being.
Okay, yeah, that's
Still
interesting.
good. Yeah.
I couldn't say the same about myself. I'm not sure. I hope so.
But also adversity shapes you too, right? What if we had cookie cutter lives and nothing ever challenge us or made us think outside the box and everything was given to us, would we still be the same person? Would we still be on this path and having this conversation if we hadn't dealt with significant challenges? Because some people have cookie cutter lives and you'd never see them in a chat room like this ever.
I think that we probably have, you know, different personalities and everything from before coming here, and that like translate with those things. Like with what I mentioned about my first memory and my theory about why I'm here. But it's like, I wanted to add on to that, basically, that, you know, we shouldn't allow our, you know, shame or guilt or anything like that from like what we might actually, you know, be lacking on a spiritual level to like stop us from thinking we're worthy to leave this place either. Like, it's not about who's the best, you know, whatever. Like, I would like to save everyone, you know, not just the good souls, you know. Yeah, I think a lot of people have different innate, you know, like levels of goodness basically in them. You know, some people are a lot darker than others. And I like, it's, but like when it comes down to it, it's kind of like the old Harry Potter moment, you know, like, yeah, the difference between Harry and Voldemort, you know, is their choices, not, you know, their innate abilities or whatever. Like, we choose who we want to be, you know.
I've always had trouble watching torture movies or anything where people are getting whipped, like slavery, anything that I literally feel like pain from watching any of that shit. I've had to leave the room in the past.
I
I
used to
just
have a
can't
lot of problems with
laugh.
that. It's I watched a movie in high school where it's like a girl got like stabbed, like she was executed basically, and I like got super fucking pissed off. But then, you know, as I suffered more and more in this realm, you know, I started, you know, not disliking it as much. Let's just say that, you know. So like you can be pretty scarred when it comes to your you know, emotional states and everything. But like that's just scarring, you know. That's not a shameful, you know, thing or anything. It's just you having your curtains folded.
And some people will never have the ability to have this conversation because they're so busy worrying about their basic needs in this reality, right? Hand to foot to mouth every day to eat, that they won't ever extensionalize any of that. You ever think of those people? They don't have a shot at really realizing any of this.
Yeah, born without a chance.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
hopefully they change over time, you know, in like their true spirits, and they can like carry on, so maybe they can get out of here at some point. But it's like if you're not ready to get out of here, you're not getting out of here.
Who decides? Who makes up your soul plan with you? How did this even happen? How are we, or us? We should discuss that. What's made up of your soul plan of how you got here? You're born in Lithuania or Russia or Canada. How does that get decided?
Well, they need consent to do anything to you, like at all. So like in the end, you're the one who decides everything, but that doesn't mean that you realize that you're the one doing it. Like they could use fear tactics, you know, to like convince you that you have to do things. Like a lot of near-death experience have, you know, the old "I had to," and then later on they say "so I agreed." Like that's so fucking common in NDE stories.
Yeah, they guilt you like the Captain Janeway episode where this being that's her father said, well, you have a dangerous job, Captain, and eventually you'll feed my matrix forever, right?
Yeah, and it's like
Like he's manipulating her.
if you have a Christian person that dies, and then, you know, fake Jesus shows up and he's like, you know, you've been a bad boy, you're gonna go to hell, or you could reincarnate and try again because I'm so nice, you know, like then the Christian is gonna be like, okay, I reincarnate, you know, and then like, oh, by the way, you're gonna be a poor African slave or something, you know. It's like, yeah, but at least you're not in hell, right?
Yeah, guilt and shame. It's what
Yeah,
makes the
and
world go.
fair, you know, like, do you want hell or do you want to be a poor African slave? It's like a poor African slave. It's
Or
like,
maybe you're born
well,
into a developed country, but you have all these health problems and you end up in an abusive marriage or something. Like it's all relative.
oh yeah,
You still have hideous challenges. Like you're
it's
not
like
starving.
whatever they can torture you with, you know, get away with. Like once your memory wiped the first time, you're gonna be an innocent little child, basically. You know, you don't have the memories to deal with the situations unless you're a fucking badass, you know, like a mafia type of guy who's like, you know, like, let me tell you what it's gonna be like, you know. Like unless you have
Or
that kind
these
of personality, then you know you're gonna be
or
manipulated.
3-year-old. Do you guys know of anyone with like that you actually know that has memories of like before they were 4 of what happened before? Extremely
No,
rare, but it does happen.
no. I've asked him. I don't know anyone.
I've seen them online, like they do exist. I just don't know anyone personally.
Right. Exactly. I don't know anyone personally.
I think most people's first memories are around 6 or 7 or something like that.
Oh, mine go back to 2 or 3, but I guess it just depends. Your brain, as science would say, doesn't really develop those core abilities to retain that until around the age of 3, but some kids are earlier than others.
Yeah, I have some like early childhood memories at like maybe 4 or 5, and drinking juice or in a crib, or the neighbor breaking his arm, but like they're just like flickers, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, some people, I've heard there's a rare condition where you can literally remember every single thing that ever happened to you. How are those people not gone completely mad? Because so much of life is trauma. Like, we want to not remember some of it because it would completely demoralize your reality with having to remember every single thing. And if we did remember past lives, then what would that do to your present state of reality? You'd be so fucked up you couldn't survive.
Oh yeah, I mean, if people, if a majority, even a minority, remembered their past lives in detail, this place would fall apart completely.
Yeah, that was an episode in the 80s. They had the Twilight Zone, and there was one where people remembered their past lives and they were just going to be reincarnated, and everybody was just committing suicide.
Right.
That was
Right.
actually a concept in the Twilight Zone. Yeah.
That's what
One
would
of my
happen.
favorite shows as a kid growing up, man. That show busted my mind.
Yeah, it's too bad they don't push the envelope like that on a regular basis anymore. You know, the
Well, we
culture
got
is
Black Mirror, but that's about it. But some of them are too
that's
dark for me.
that's
But
it.
the one Nosedive was good though, right? Where they have that character Lacey, and everybody has an
Yeah,
implant in their eye, and you rate everyone constantly. And if you go below a 3 in your rating, end up in jail if you're
yeah.
not constantly smiling and happy.
She smashed that character too. She did a great job.
Oh, that was amazing episode. You guys watched the music video "Chained to the Rhythm" by Katy Perry, where everybody's kind of like a drone and going through these amusement park rides, and the clock says 1984 as they're coming through, and everybody's kind of asleep and in a fake state of happiness, and they're throwing people over top of the fence, and it's awesome. You can watch the inner workings of that music video. There's a ton of hidden stuff within that, and within reality, she wakes up and takes off her sunglasses and realizes that something's wrong in this reality of that music video concept.
Yeah, Katy Perry's always rocking the symbolism. She's got a lot of depth to her content
I
for
wonder
sure.
about her. Like, is she positive or negative or some of both? Who knows? She used to be a Christian singer, right? And she broke away from all that.
So, what are you guys' like wish lists? You know, like stuff you want to do when you leave this realm. Like, do you have any like create these things or whatever experiences you want
I
to see?
just want my memories back. I mean, I don't think you can really know what you want until you have memories back from whatever you were before, right? It's all relative. What really matters. Definitely creating a private realm. Maybe relive all of this life the way it's supposed to go. If it was actually sane, that would be nice.
Yes.
Relive the whole thing, bing bang boom, the way things. If I could be like my own director of the show called My Life, of how it should have gone, right? When things were fair and there was an even keel playing ground here.
So I'm not sure if I linked this to you or not. There was a NDE that I listened to, and it's like the first one that I've ever heard where somebody was kind of speaking in call it some of the Gnostic terms. But the gentleman said he went to heaven. On his way back, he meets the creator of the or the ruler of the world, I should say. And on part of signing whatever contract it was, he basically says that you have sort of like an if then else sort of scenarios that play out. So, like in computer programming, there'll be these if then statements, and it'll be like, if this happens, then this will happen. But then you also have sort of a backup of an else statement. So, if the whatever property isn't met for the if, for the then to happen, the else would kick in. And so, if you nail all of the if then statements, and you don't get any else's, then you would essentially get sort of like that perfect life, right? And then he goes on to say that at the same time, that's kind of like your free will. There will also be someone else that's almost sort of counter to that, where their if thens will be like maybe they'll mess you up or they'll trip you up or something sort of like plotted against you in a sense. So it's sort of almost like the illusion of free will. It's sort of like a restricted free will, in that there will be someone else exerting their free will kind of in the opposite direction. So I think that a lot of, possibly a lot of people that agreed to it, sort of thinking that I can nail the all the if thens, without realizing that there would be someone else on the other side of that trying to get you basically into some of those else statements. And I think it would be really cool, yeah, to see sort of the if thens play out, um, without having the game sort of rigged against you in that way.
So we get into this question of like when we dream, for example, I've seen my life, but something is different in the projection of whatever I'm viewing about a certain part of my life that went differently within that dream. So are there parallel realms, right? Like this one where everything's slightly different based on your choices or, the matrix just going a little bit awry? What do you guys think of that theory? That there's parallel universes or dimensions? Or is there just this one soul trap? Are there multiple?
It wouldn't surprise me if there's multiple soul trap. I mean, for all I know, I'm in my own singular soul trap, and like all you guys are fake, and like there's a bunch of other soul traps for individual spirits. Like, who fucking knows? Like, I don't think that's the case, but like it could be. There's probably different, scenarios and all kinds of shit, It's not necessarily that, we have this type of world, every time the soul trap, runs its course, Could be like different scenarios, all kinds of shit.
In one reality you've got a brother and one you don't, and
Yeah, why not?
one reality you were never born, you just don't even exist in that reality.
One
There
where
was
we
that
fight
German
on
show that
giant
came out about that.
dinosaurs with laser beams, like that old TV
Yeah,
show.
of course the Simpsons did that. Homer went to parallel universes with his magical time traveling toaster. That was a
I
funny
remember that
episode.
one.
Oh my god.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like, what happened? He goes to the one where like they're rich, but they're like, he's like, what about the donuts or something like that? And they're like, donuts. And he's like, no. He leaves, and like 2 seconds later, I'm like, oh look, it's raining again, but it's not raindrops, it's donuts now.
Has anyone watched the series Dark? It was recommended to me. I got through most of it, but that's the scenario. They have a time traveling device, and they go into a parallel version of their Germany because it's in German, right? It's dubbed, and they can travel 33 years in the past or the future. And if they travel 33 years, they can go another 33. So there's all these different alternate versions of their timeline, and then they go into another version of Earth that's got whole separate timelines in it. That show has some serious shit going down. I think it's on Netflix. It's called Dark.
I have not seen that show yet.
It got too dark for me though, because literally, like the main characters just end up in this hell realm and they just keep being tortured. And I'm like, there was some excellent writing in this series, and then it just ends up like this. What? Sometimes series like that go on just way too long, like an NPC made up the rest of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like how the first season of The Good Place is pretty good and follows consent rules, and then they break it down in order to have more seasons.
Yeah, it's just the same ideas reiterated over and over, and you're like, okay, this should have been, shut down. The idea's been done. You guys have seen Castaway, right, with Tom Hanks and Wilson the volleyball?
Oh yeah.
There's that pivotal scene where they have that imagery of the angels on the box, and the whole reason he survived on the island is because he didn't open one package with these wings. And then at the end, there's these three different streams of reality. Is he gonna follow this lady with angel wings on the back of her truck? Is he gonna go after his ex-wife that's now married to his dentist, or is he just gonna go off by himself? So you see these parallel paths that he's got. It's more going on that show than people think.
Movies and TV shows have a lot of depth to them that like it's really hard to comprehend. It's
Do you find that shows lately have more depth, or do you think we got more in depth stuff like maybe 20, 15 years ago, or do you think it's comparable?
It's probably comparable. There's a good YouTuber called Collective Learning that does like movie like analyzing, where he sees the depths and like all the different meanings, the like small details and everything. And then you have other like YouTubers that does like more like political and soul trap oriented stuff. Like all these shows and movies have so many fucking like details to them about like symbolism and everything. Like even the shitty new Star Wars movies, where they forced Luke to drink milk. Like even that one has a bunch of symbolism. So it's not like they couldn't make a good movie. Like all of this shit is deliberate. Like it is deliberately made the way it is. So like they know all this shit, when they put it into their movies.
So is there some element of us being allowed to, have subtle hints of what this reality really is hidden within books, films, movies? And if you have the eyes to see, you see it. So is that written into our soul contracts or whatever?
Well, when it comes
Right?
to the life scripts and soul contracts, the way I look at it is this way. So there's two steps to it, basically, like parts. There's the auto routine of the Matrix. So if you just decide to go into the city one day and then you sit down on a bench and start talking to a random stranger, you could make friends with that stranger even if that stranger has nothing to do with your life script. And the Matrix will simulate a person, for you to befriend, and like make your best friend or whatever. And then you have the life script, which is like what the Matrix is allowed to do to you. So, for example, the Matrix can write in that at the age 13 you get hit by a car and gets disabled for the rest of your life. Now, in order for the Matrix to disable you at 13, it can either wait for a random car to accidentally hit you, like if you don't look on the side of the road or something, or it can have a life script agreement where it can basically spawn in a car and it will definitely hit you. Like no matter what you do, basically, it's gonna hit you. Like the death in the Final Destination movies. Like it's coming for you. There is someone walking behind you. Turn around. Like shit like that. So basically, when you sign your life script or whatever, the Matrix uses the agreements that you make in order to affect you because it can't affect you in any way that you haven't agreed to. And when you come here, you agree to the base routines of the Matrix, like cars and the person on the bench and so on, because those are just routine things. So, and my mind went a little bit blank there. Let's see here.
Do we write in life challenges then, Jake? Like, do you write in particular really traumatic things that are going to happen to you, or is that just random?
No, that's not random. I mean, you can hear in pre-birth memories, people agreeing to different things, and like debating, oh, well, if you want those memories when you come down here, then your life is gonna, have to experience this thing and so on. So, like, we agree to all those things.
So I had to learn to walk again when I was 6 years old. My dad dumped an entire keg of coffee on my leg. We had a new puppy and we're in a truck, right? All the skin peeled off my leg and I had to learn to walk again. Was that pre-decided that that shit was going to happen to me?
I mean, maybe it's like that story that Mark from Forever, told like some days ago, whatever, weeks ago, about the girl who had a scarf that like her mother kept insisting that she would tie around her neck in a certain
Yeah,
way.
she almost got strangled and then she had an NDE. I
Yeah, I
heard
mean
that one.
that's obviously a life script. Like her mother NPC character is, programmed to do this thing to make sure that she has the NDE. Like that is all scripted. Like that's not a
Even though it doesn't
coincidence.
make any sense. Like, you're going to choke your kid, lady. Like, stop doing that. But she does it
Yeah,
anyway.
but the NPC doesn't know that. It's just doing its auto routines.
Yeah, and we inherently trust our parents because they're supposed to
Oh,
help
I
us,
don't.
even though sometimes mucked up individuals. Well, if you're a little kid, right? Like, they're your whole world.
Oh
You
yeah,
don't start realizing what jerks they are until you get a little bit older, at least if you're me.
yeah.
You believe all of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. What I was gonna mention again with the live script thing. So basically, when it comes to the movies and everything and how they show us the truth. So imagine if the Matrix is, trying to get you back into the Matrix or whatever, and then you have some questions, before you agree or whatever, and it's like, oh, could I leave this place if I wanted to? And the Matrix is like, oh yeah, you could leave if you wanted to. And it's like, okay, so the Matrix agreed that you're able to leave. Well, in order to leave, you would have to be able to find the information on how to leave. But that doesn't mean that the Matrix has to make it easy for you. So what does the Matrix do? It puts the information in what it calls fiction.
Yeah.
So it's like
And
hiding it
then
in
you have,
plain sight and making you think
yeah,
that it's not the actual information.
correct. But you have to be smart enough and intellectual enough and savvy enough to be able to figure out the bigger puzzle. All
Yeah.
of life is a game and a puzzle.
And I also have another saying that I came up with, which is basically, they call it fiction because we have the power of fiction as creator beings. Because we can literally create from the fiction of our own minds. Because that is what the truth is.
So are we creating reality as a consensus of beings on this realm, or is there individual creation happening at some level?
I think
Where
most
your
of it
higher
is the
self is
matrix
creating.
presets, and then like
Yeah.
our agreements that dictates what happens, and then there's probably shit like placebo effect, you know, and other stuff that like trickles into it.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of really boring periods too where nothing's really happening, right?
Yeah, so it's probably a bit of a mix of like all of the different things together, not just one thing.
Yeah.
What do you think of that Bruce Lipton guy? You guys are familiar with Bruce Lipton?
Biology of Belief, yeah. I've read his book. I think there's some truth there mixed with lies, as most of these so-called truthers.
What's that book about?
It's the interaction of your mind and body and how you process, how your cells receive information, that there's something inherent in your perception of reality with how your mind and body interprets reality. So your belief systems can cause changes to your reality because there's a mind-matter connection. That's his premise. He offers a radical alternative to our understanding of the influence of genes in determining our behavior and identity. So it's www.blinkist.com and then biology of belief after that. The link's in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description for people to click.
Yeah, Blinkist is a great little app and website.
And then there's the Tom Campbell materials. Has anybody delved into his stuff? My Big Toe? He's a quantum physicist that also worked for the Monroe Institute that delves into what is reality, and he also talks about NPCs within his whole belief system and how reality works, and he compares it to World of Warcraft or The Sims. And he's kind of thinks my issue I have with him is he says all of the suffering and crap that happens is all for learning and how we all learn to grow up, right? But I mean, we've got some very advanced people that suffer through unbelievable painful illnesses and problems, and that's helping them grow up through unbelievable suffering. So I've got some issues with what he says, but he does make some good points.
The only thing that the Matrix taught me is how to be evil, and you know, luckily I was able to, you know, move my way out of that line of thinking, you know, to not become that way. So like the whole school thing is bullshit.
Well,
Yeah.
you learn how to make brown sauce, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's like the one big thing my father taught me how to do, you know, some good brown sauce.
You guys should listen to the song by Boy in a Band. It's called Don't Stay in School. But it basically has things like I learned to do higher maths, but I don't know how to solve issues with my mental health. And it goes through everything we should have been taught and what they taught us and how it's useless. But excellent video. Boy in a Band, Don't Stay in School.
By the way, do you have a link to the second guy? The physicist?
Tom Campbell? Yeah, I can put a link to Tom Campbell's My Big Toe Summary.
I mean, that's kind of interesting, you know, because with the double slit experiment and the delayed quantum eraser experiment, you know, it kind of shows that reality like resets itself depending on if you're observing it or not. Kind of shows how, you know, this is just
here's about
simulation.
a paragraph. My Big Toe is a model of existence and reality that's based directly on Campbell's scientific research and firsthand experience. It represents the results and conclusion of 30 years of scientific exploration of the boundaries and contents of reality from both the physical and metaphysical viewpoints. So I'll post the synopsis here. And it legit has a big toe on the cover.
Yeah, I don't buy the lessons learned. In my opinion, I think the system is kind of going for the sake of the system. Meaning, like maybe it initially began as some sort of learning, but then something else took over. Nothing heads in a straight line. Everything's in the circular loop pattern. And for you to learn anything, that would be something, you know, when we talk about learning, we say you didn't know, and then you did know. You went from, you know, grade kindergarten to grade 12. You went through this program. There's a start and a finish, and it's very linear. However, everything that I'm kind of researching and learning now is that, for the most part, everything just kind of loops over on itself again for the sake of itself. Excuse me. For the sake of itself.
Yeah, I think the whole mission thing, like, you've heard of Dolores Cannon, I'm assuming. Like, we're all supposed to have missions, and we came here for a reason, and we've got to, hang out because we volunteered for this. Like, that's another whole life script
What's
type. The Dolores
what was her?
Cannon materials. Yeah.
Yeah, what was her mission then? I haven't heard anybody say anything about a very specific mission.
So basically she regressed people that were, hypnotized, and she started seeing that they had past life experiences and also experiences of in between lifetimes. And she documented all of this information, this channeled material she got from these individuals in all of her books. And I think she's got about like 12 of them. There's tons of information. Like, she didn't write this stuff. It's all from these people she regressed. But basically her whole theory is that there's a group of individuals on that playnet or whatever that agreed to sign up that are more evolved than others and are here to improve the frequency of Earth. So basically we go into 5D or something. That's the whole presence of, or the premise of her materials.
So they don't have like a specific mission, like like a quest would be, sort of outlined. Say, go slay,
No
go
Legend
slay
of
5
Zelda.
dragons. Yeah, go slay 5 dragons.
Your life script has a purpose according to her, right? And there's this group of volunteers, and they are born in different areas of time. I'd be one of the second group of volunteers. The first group of volunteers are people born in the 50s, 40s, and 60s, and then the final group of volunteers would be people born, like, say, after 19 or after 2000, I think she says. But yeah, they each have a unique part of their so-called mission to bring, life on this dimensional plane to a higher realm of existence. So that's her whole premise, and she's got a ton of followers, and her daughter now took over her work, Julia Cannon, and of course is making tons of money off the books and chats and all this stuff. So more people looking for hopium, and it's not really ending up anywhere.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, some time ago. It's like, if you've had 1,000 lifetimes, and let's just say that for some reason you lived as a girl for 999 lifetimes, and then this time you live as a man, and then you die and you remember your past, like, aren't you gonna identify as a woman more than as a man? It kind of goes, with the whole programming, kind of like the what was it, like 12-year-old, or the 90-year-old evil soldier, So, I mean, it's not like we have, sexual attraction to people, when, we're before puberty or whatever. So it's, I mean, that seems like a Matrix implant.
I think the eat, sleep, reproduce is definitely an implant into your core being to want that. Obviously, you need sleep or you die, but I'm talking about the reproduction one. I think it's a program.
I should try thinking about the sexy stuff the next time I manage to have an OB, to like see if I'm, turned on by it or something.
You're gonna start manifesting a bunch of cocks, Jake.
Oh God, like, I'm not fucking gay, okay?
No, I'm saying you might be like, manifest that, be like, huh, does that do anything for my spiritual? But in regards to the sexual preferences, I mean, I think a lot of this is, a lot of your personality is still there. It's just covered within layers. And the best kind of metaphor for it was, if you have a window in your house, and then you'll put like curtains, and then you also have, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like that lace that would also be there with the curtains. So maybe you don't want to have completely opaque curtains up. So then you'll draw the second portion of the curtains that'll have like a lace where it allows some of the light to pass through. And so in that design where it's kind of wavy, because it's not pulled, it's not pulled taut, so they're going to be kind of waves in there. If you were to look at the difference of light passing through the parts that are, I want to say, like more wavy than not, you're going to see almost like a wave pattern. And I think that's what the personality would look like, where your personality could be synonymous with like the light, and then the veil, as it were, would be sort of like the realm that you're in. And that may sort of distort the light, or to start to create the light to have light spots, hot spots, and less light or darker spots, if you will. And when it comes down to like sexuality, I think that's more of a probably more of a spiritual thing or something that you kind of come with by default. And then whatever extra that kind of, gets added on maybe through like physical pleasures, things that you picked up on, those might kind of play a part in shaping that preference, if you will.
All excellent points.
Yeah, I mean, like if you start creating your own realms, and it's like, yeah, if you could choose your own, like preferences and stuff, then or like if your preferences is innately to you, like that's a good question to consider.